Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Last Mile Deliveries Are Booming, Yet My Profits Are Declining. Thank you very much to take the time to tune in. It's, let's say, busy in coming into the webinar, so we will briefly start off with a small introductory. I am Kevin Onderbeke, Senior Sales and Project Manager at Alles for about 3 years now. And I am here together with my esteemed colleague, Miguel van As, who will briefly introduce himself.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. Hello, also everyone from my side. My name is Miguel van As, as said. I'm head of the Alles data analytics team, now working at Alles for 5 years. So looking forward to kick this off and to give you some, hopefully a nice webinar.
Yeah, thank you. So the goal of this webinar is to show how supply chain optimization and simulation can help you with the task of streamlining your supply chain network design and operations. We will walk you through our business case step by step and give you some valuable insights on the execution of the project that we did for one of our retail customers. Now, before we start, let's just give some small practical details. This webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be made available for all attendees to share with your colleagues or even friends. Why not? Should you have any questions, please don't hesitate to post them on the chat box or the Q&A box. During the webinar, if we see some time, we can address them. Otherwise, we have also at the end of the webinar a small block of time that we save for a Q&A session. So please post them. If we don't have the time to address all questions, rest assured we will address them then personally after the webinar by contacting you and have a small discussion or even a workshop if you want. Please do also check our website, www.solutionsbeyondlogistics.com, if you want more information on how we tackle those challenges in supply chain optimization, visualization, and simulation. And should you lose connection, the link that you got on the registration together with the passcode is still valid, so you can reconnect by just clicking on that link. So without further ado, let's get this started with the agenda of today. First of all, we will start with a brief introduction on, let's say, a little bit of framework of what our customers in the retail sector is encountering. These are exactly like the title says, the challenges, but also opportunities, of course. After which we then also will address and go with a little bit more in detail and a deep dive into our business case, where my colleague Miguel will kick this off and take you through this step by step. The third step will be, let's say, a brief summary of what we have learned and the challenges and the solution, but also the benefits that customer had with the project and also with the implementation. And then, as last, we save some time, as said, for a small Q&A session. So, as an introductory, the challenges that we see is very, very clear, let's say, at first. And we see that for the retail sector, it is, the omni-channel consumer, let's say, in the retail sector has forever changed that sector. And there is no turning back. As a consumer, you have a lot of different options to connect to your product that you seek, or your service that you are looking for. And while marketeers may scramble to navigate new demands and expectations, how retailers should communicate with those consumers or potential customers, there is a more fundamental change occurring in the retail operations behind it. So actually how to manage to get your supply chain ready to tackle all those channels coming in, and particularly also the performance of that supply chain. So as a business challenge, we see that the retail supply chain was actually designed for or to do one thing, and that is to fulfill stores on which the stores also fulfill the customer demand. Now, when consumers' demand is so much more, but also so diverse, and even the customer profile is also changing, is also more demanding, yeah, it's obvious that retailers must respond to be prepared to get also the attention of the consumer. Unfortunately, the supply chain challenges are particularly also, it's an acute problem, time sensitive. And so we see that a lack of visibility in the inventory, lack of visibility in transportation network, but also the increased pressure on the rotation of that inventory and the margin, of course, is very, very present today. And on top of that, we see that there is a growing sense among retailers that they are really missing out on a lot of demand just because of that volatile customer demand, that profile that is changing, but also the vast and the means that they get as a consumer to connect to all the competitors out there in the sector. So the bottleneck, as we see it, is that the supply chain itself poses unique challenges for the retailers. It is obvious that they have to make a lot of investments on infrastructure in terms of where to locate our fulfillment center, distribution center, how to organize milk runs, how to organize transportation at certain costs, so that there is capacity, and also, let's say, the systems that are supporting this, IT systems, but also people. And actually, on the fact of people, the biggest organization inhibitor that we see is actually for that cross-channel fulfillment, the organization itself. We see that a lot of companies are still maintaining that classic distribution model, and too many people, let's say, within the organization have too little of a piece of the overall fulfillment process. So a holistic view of the customer fulfillment and the process to get that fulfillment at a decent cost, but also at a very high customer service level, because the customer is demanding, that is actually the biggest bottleneck. And retailers are particularly challenged to build the business case needed to drive that change. If you see that there are a lot of bottlenecks and of course the challenge arising, on the other hand, we have a lot of opportunities still, because on the fact that we have that changing world, a volatile world, but also ambiguous, uncertain, there is a lot of variations in the fulfillment and the cross-channel fulfillment. But on the fact that they see what there is still needed to get a robust system, there is clearly one primary channel that consumers prefer, and that is still the store. Because actually, if you want to select a product, in 90% of the sales, there is still a feeling of having that brick and mortar store or a showroom to see what you are buying as a consumer. And so all those transactions are still happening within that store environment. And so the biggest opportunity for a retailer is to tie that demand and capture it from all the channels to put it in somewhat of an in-store fulfillment environment, and also an in-store, let's say, place, so that the consumer can select the right product for his needs. And so what then we see as Alders, and we already saw that coming more than 5 years ago, is that a big enabler to fulfill that need, and also to change strategy, but also adapt that strategy to get that supply chain as performant as it can get, is that the technology stack today is very broad, but also very powerful. We as Alders we have chosen to partner up with Llamasoft. And as we see that Llamasoft is a very powerful tooling to help our customer, we see that modeling the as-is situation, the current supply chain, optimize that into an as-is situation with an optimized baseline so that you know where you can aim for. And then thirdly, of course, also the scenarios, putting in place what if can happen and simulating, plus also the sensitivity analysis of that is very powerful in that secure environment, because only then you are very capable to make the decision, not only on a strategic level, but also on the tactical and operational level, on how to implement and change, tweak your supply chain to really get that demand and those sales and those revenues at a decent cost, at the right cost with the right capacity. And so that is really what also that enabling, that the technology is enabling, in fact.
I think, Kevin, if I can add and maybe ask a question there as well. I think you set the scene quite well with the business challenges, the upcoming bottlenecks, and the opportunities. I'm pretty well aware that this is something that more and more logistics and supply chain managers tend to come in contact with. Do you see this happening in wider industries besides retail? And then also, do you think the current economic situation, like for example with COVID-19, has influenced this?
Yeah, of course, Miguel, you're very much right. It is not only for that one customer as we actually experience it. It is for the whole of the retail sector, for sure, something that is happening. It is already ongoing, already for some years now, but it manifests itself now in a very rapid change because of the disruption like COVID-19, of course. And so we see that retailers that are really are investing in big data analytics and doing something with that, they are really on the front running position to capture those extra customers, that extra revenue and extra sales. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So as I let's say portrayed a little bit the framework and why we would like to share with you this webinar. This is something that we also want to share with you in terms of tangible results. Also how we help our customer in certain steps, but also how we help them structure their data and the focus on what the strategy should be. So I would like to invite Miguel, my colleague, to kick this off also with that deep dive, as we said, and yeah, take us through what we did for that customer and how we really helped them change that strategy and put that implementation roadmap in place.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. So I think you already quite well set the scene. And to make this a little bit more tangible, I brought this business case with the enhancing title, as you said, last mile deliveries are booming, yet my profits are declining. Now, setting the scene a bit, our customer is a furniture retailer who is doing all types of furniture, going from bathroom furniture to garden furniture. And that brings a lot of hassle in terms of logistics because their order profile is quite diverse. They have at-home deliveries for big full-blown bathrooms and kitchens, which is quite enormous in weight and volume. But then on the other hand, they also have a lot of smaller deliveries. Think of smaller tables, smaller cranes in bathrooms and stuff like that. So there was a challenge in providing that multi-channel way of delivering their customers. Now, before I really get into the data analytics of this, I do need to explain a little bit their current way of working. And in that sense, I tried to make a scheme to show a little bit how this exactly works. So today there is one fulfillment center that our customer in the retail operates, and from which they deliver their orders. And ordering in their supply chain is going via the showrooms. So every customer or end customer visits a showroom, gets his furniture or looks at his nice piece of furniture that he wants to buy, and then orders that via the showroom. Now, these showrooms um, collect the orders and bring them to the fulfillment center. And from the fulfillment center, each individual customer gets an at-home delivery that is organized in milk run distribution to deliver these end customers. Now, of course, as I said, there is an increase in smaller deliveries. This because since with recent economic situations, more and more people tend to order online. And what our customers saw was that with this trend, there was also an increase in smaller order deliveries in terms of volume and size, which has led to a struggle in the logistics strategy. And therefore, they came to us with the question, okay, Alers, can you help us in first detecting what the problem is, and then in solving and redesigning the e-commerce strategy? So in order to show you that, I've brought some data analytics, which I'm going to explain in an easy way. This is an overview of the order profile going from July 2019 to July 2020. And the order profile is already split in terms of bigger orders. Think of bedrooms, big kitchens, things that are high in volume, high in weight, and then also smaller deliveries where you have these small tables. Now it becomes interesting if we put this trend in comparison with the route costs. Now this route cost is the key performance indicator that our customer was using to track its logistics performance in terms of costing. Now, what we see here is that this is quite spiky. There are peaks and then lows, which is to be expected, of course, when they're on a day that there are a lot of big deliveries, big bedrooms that need to be delivered. We have some peaks. Of course, when we have lower days, we tend to have a low. But what's interesting is that there is also a trend in this route cost. The further we move from July 2019 to July 2020, we also see our smaller orders increasing. And it's these smaller orders that gives us this trend over time where we have an increase in route costs. Now, this was something that our customer detected, our retail customer, and they said, we need to do something about it.
So, Miguel, sorry to interrupt, but as I see then the lower part of your graph, it is very spiky, it's very high and low, but you see actually the trend. So am I right to conclude that the trend is coming from the smaller shipments, and then the spikes are actually the bigger shipments, so that there was a very inequilibrium in their network?
Yeah, 100% right, because route cost is indeed increasing with the number of shipments that need to be delivered on that day. However, what we saw is that with the smaller deliveries, our routes tend to get a lot longer. We had to do a lot more stops. We had to deliver very small amounts, which was resulting in an upward trend for our costs. However, these peaks and lows is important for us because we need to do that business, that big business, because there's also a lot of revenue compared to that. But it's mainly with these smaller deliveries that we could identify a problem. And that becomes even more clear when we look at the situation on the geographical scale. So when I, for example, click a high period, I can see the geographical delivery profile of our customer in Belgium and the Netherlands. And what you see is every postal code here is divided and gets a color code depending on how high the drop cost is for this specific region in the network. Now, of course, regions that are more far away from the current distribution center in Antwerp are more orange, more red. But the logistics manager of our customers was used to also see a lot of areas in green, where his route cost was actually manageable. And what we saw over time was that this route cost or this map was becoming more orange, more red over time. We also have a view on the total delivery cost for this specific month that I selected in the previous view. And this was quite high. So this immediately, yes, this immediately indicated that we had to do something about it. And that thinking exercise was actually supported, or the first step in doing that was by looking at our current showroom locations. This map gives an overview on the showroom locations today. So we see we have in Belgium and the Netherlands, we have quite a presence in terms of showrooms to attach customers from all of Belgium and the Netherlands. And it was with these showrooms in place that we started thinking, is it not possible to start combining these smaller shipments and consolidate them again, so we can transport them immediately to the showrooms rather than having this very high split of small orders that we need to deliver at home. So when looking at that, we started to rethink the way we would deliver our customers by having some kind of replenishment strategy. And that replenishment strategy is explained quite well in my next slide.
So Miguel, just to an idea of getting to know that customer, they come from a traditional distribution system with one centralized DC in the region of Antwerp, and they have a lot of stores, but also a lot of orders that they also directly deliver. Yeah, to get that omni-channel supply chain strategy in, they had to split up the bigger shipments and consolidate the smaller ones, and then also use, and that was a new given, use those stores actually also as inventory points, so that they had also that safety stock, let's say, to get the smaller shipments very close to the customer.
Yes, correct. So the first idea was to start reconsolidating those smaller shipments and deliver the showrooms rather than the end customer's home address. So what you see on the visual here is that instead of now going to the end customers with milk runs, where we saw that there was a lot more stops, a lot higher costs of routes, that we are now replenishing our showrooms with these smaller SKUs. And the showrooms where we could then consolidate quite a lot of our shipments, which made it a lot more cheap and a lot better. Now, when we look at the results of this strategy, we see that we save quite an amount in transportation costs, because when we look at our map, we see a lot more areas becoming green again, because we can consolidate our smaller shipments. And we see actually that there's quite a big difference when we look at the total cost in July 2020. Now, this is very interesting because that means that, of course, we can save a lot of money, but also our delivery profile is changing. So the first idea or the first question of our customer that came to mind whenever we saw that this was a solid solution to go for was, okay, we are not delivering to customers' home address anymore. Isn't our center of gravity changing? Are we still in the right location to deliver our showrooms from these particular places? So also there we had a look whether it was ideal or more optimal to move the central fulfillment center to another location, thinking, for example, in Limburg, in Genk, we had the opportunity to have a look, and we see that the green area shift more towards the east of Belgium. However, when we look at the total cost, we also see an increase, which is not the ideal situation. Now, we also investigated whether Ghent was a good solution, and then we see the green locations or the route, the cheaper routes move towards East Flanders, West Flanders, which is more beneficial, but also there we see that the costs are not really improving. Now, what was ideal was to move a little bit more to the south of Antwerp and more towards Brussels, because there we saw that we could achieve a nice saving. So Willebroek was then selected as a potential good new optimal location for this type of strategy. Going forward, and that's maybe something you already said, Kevin, is that of course we are missing a cost component in this view, because
actually that is also something that was on my mind. The customer acknowledged the benefit of the new strategy, getting that fulfillment to have some bigger volume into the truck. But yeah, on the other hand, you have the stores that act as a stock point with some safety stock, and getting that route a little bit shorter to the customer. So that means that you actually have some extra holding costs to get it into the store, but also to keep it in a certain level of safety stock. So I think that that's the part that you were alluding to, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Because while we are winning quite a lot of transportation costs, because we are cutting out a small piece, which is the last mile, because we are delivering to showrooms, and also because we have the ability to consolidate rather than stop every 5 minutes to deliver to a customer, we do need to take into account that if we want to deliver showrooms, we need to keep some stock. So in this exercise or in this project, we also work together with our customer to look at these stock policies and to have a look at individual stores and individual SKUs to understand what exactly we needed in terms of safety stock, in terms of ordering policies, in terms of replenishing the stores. And we made a tool available to have a look at that on really store level, but also on SKU level. So going further into the case, if I go to my next slide, we see that here, and I've selected one specific store close to the Ghent area, we see that our tool is immediately selecting the orders which are in the area of this particular store. And then it gives me a list of available SKUs that we should stock, or that we at least should have available in this particular store. Now, eventually, when I select this product, we also get some recommendations of our tool, which inventory policy to use, but also what policy parameters to use. And then eventually, we can also simulate the whole year to understand how our inventory policy in this particular store for this particular product is performing throughout the year. These statistics here on top give us some information about the maximum units of inventory we will have, the minimum units of inventory, how much we will have in there on average, but also it gives us an idea on how many back orders we'll have, because not every time a customer is ordering, we will have that table, for example, that small table available in the store. Maybe we will have to do some back orders, but depending on the service level and what exactly we want of this SKU, we can understand what exactly has happened in the simulation. You also mentioned safety stock. The tool also gives us an indication on the safety stock we will need, and of course calculates what exactly the inventory cost for this particular SKU will be. Now, this is interesting because it this tool not just gave us a recommendation or not just did a simulation and gives us the ability to evaluate, but typically with inventory, you have a lot of parameters to take into account, especially for bigger companies. Certain SKUs are conformed to certain inventory rules. We need to set a minimum service level. We can differentiate across customer groups, etc. Certain stores need to have that inventory, certain stores don't need it. So also there was the flexibility in the tool to change certain parameters to understand exactly what we needed depending on the requirements of our customer.
So Miguel, one question that also popped up is, okay, we are in the retail sector, so promotions with a certain type of product or a product group is something that often happens, because then salespeople can work towards a certain promotion period and also in a certain region. Is it then correct to acknowledge that with that tool, with that simulation tool, uh, a wave of promotion material, whether it is the actual product, but also the auxiliaries, things that are given with that promotion, is also something that you can simulate and then put into the model so that you are prepared for the supply chain to actually stock up a little bit more products, because you have a sort of a forecasted volume that will add to the normal safety stock, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the peak you see here for this particular SKU in the example is actually a promotion, because we had a lot more ordered there. So we were building up a little bit of stock. So there, the simulation already took it into account, but it's definitely a parameter that we need to take into account. And of course, when you are determining inventory levels, when you are setting a new strategy for the future between this and 5 to 10 years, it's 100% certain that you will need a forecast, a decent forecast that can help you to estimate the volumes of the future. Now, every forecast is always wrong, but by setting the right parameters and by testing the robustness of your inventory policy, you tend to get quite good results to cope with these type of problems.
So how does that look like if you take the costs of the transport network, let's say, and then add to that the inventory costs that builds up, of course?
Yeah, so you see that here we have an indication of the inventory cost for this SKU for the whole store, for this particular store. But of course, if we take it countrywide again, or at least Belgium, Netherlands wide again, then we need a view on how exactly this inventory is impacting our full supply chain costs. Because while we were previously delivering with very small shipments on long routes with a lot of stops, we are now consolidating towards our showrooms for certain SKUs. For bigger SKUs, we're still delivering at home. But when we see and when we take this inventory cost that we saw previously for that one SKU and one product, when we consolidate that and compare it to the initial situation, then we see that actually this type of strategy has still some benefits in terms of reorganizing the delivery and the omni-channel strategy in this way. Now, I'm not, because this is a lot about data analytics, there's a lot about delivery profiles and how we are going to replenish the store, stock policies, etc. Now, this will require some change management as well, because we're still saving money because we are cutting out that final delivery to our end consumer. But of course, the customer needs to be re-educated a little bit in that sense, because for smaller shipment, it is possible to get that immediately at the store and he can already get that home, while his bigger orders will be delivered still at his home address. So going further, and I think I'm there already on on the conclusion of the business case. So I think we went quite a journey with this customer, starting from an initial as is situation where we saw that there was an increasing amount of small e-commerce shipments that we compared to the current route costs throughout Belgium and the Netherlands, where we saw and determined that there was definitely an increasing trend, regardless of the peaks and the lows that we had from bigger shipments. Investigating this led us to rethinking the way of organizing this, using our showrooms as delivery locations, so we could reconsolidate these smaller shipments towards points throughout our network where we could send consolidated volumes. So, and then we saw our delivery cost going back down again, asking ourselves the question, are we still in the right location? Where we managed to find a better solution in Willebroek rather than in Antwerp. Now, what we then realized was that this is not just a transportation problem, but also an inventory problem. Because when we're going to start using our showrooms as stock locations, we need to understand how much stock we need from which SKU and where, and of course, what this will cost us. So also there, we determined the ideal to be set up, not just on transportation, but also on inventory. And we provided them with a tool to simulate this way of working over and over again, so they could include certain things like a promotion, for example, like a forecast that they reforecasted every couple of years or months. So also there, that was quite a powerful solution to them.
So what we see also as then the benefit of doing that in that sort of a data driven of data analytics driven way is that you don't have to incur a lot of costs by just doing or implementing some patches or some changes right in the field. So that means that you have a direct cost because of the change. You can do it in that secure environment of that model and really do some sensitivity analysis in getting the real value, but also what is impacting costing, and also not only costing, but monitoring, let's say, what the progress is getting to the next milestone. I think if you do that in phases based on that model, you know what to expect, and you also know what milestone that you have to achieve to get to that next level, and have that strategy a little bit modern based on that omni-channel consumer profile. And so in doing that, it is not only a model, it's not only a simulation, but it's also a decision support tool. It is a full support for not only the people, let's say, that are working in the warehouse, in the fulfillment center, but also for people that have to take that strategic decision. So for a management point of view, it's very interesting also to know to align that strategy and seeing also the improvements from let's say the daily or the weekly or the monthly figures that come out of the budget, and then comparing that with the real figures. Yeah, it's good to know that then you can tweak a little bit based on that model again what the strategy can be, and also based on that you can also see what if scenarios that keep you alert and keep you also at bay if there is a big disruption, for example, so that you are moving faster to collect that extra revenue from customers that are maybe lost in the field and don't know where to go to. So I think that was a very good and a nice case how supply chain optimization and simulation really gives you that insight. It's not only data, like you said, Miguel. It's also how people can then relate, people within the organization relate to what the strategy then is, and also what the impact is on the holistic view, on the bigger picture, of course. So yeah, I think from our side, this was a little bit what we would like to, what we had in mind to share. I hope that was insightful. I think it's a good way to show how we tackle those things, how we tackle those projects. And so I would like to thank you from our side again for the attention, for your time. And if there are any questions, please don't hesitate. I see already let's say a remark in the chat box, and that was very early on in the webinar, and it's right. So the remark was that ours is doing what Gartner is predicting. Every company, or even certainly in the logistics sector, every company should be or become an IT company. So do something with that data, and getting it at the right place, at the right time, at the right price. Of course, that is one of the credos, let's say, within ours. We fit our organization to your profile, so that's right. We take that advantage with us, because we see that it's not only about procurement, or not only about operational excellence. It's also about having that backbone of data, predicting things, predicting also the impact, but also validating what is happening in your organization based on external events, and that's a really powerful combination in our experience, of course. Yeah.
Kevin, I see also here that there is a question in the Q&A coming in. So maybe one there. The question here is, how do you get to the data to perform such an analysis? And how much of my time as a customer is then needed? Maybe a bit your view on this?
Well, yeah, it's
we still have 3 more minutes, so we
can... for sure. Well, yeah, it's not that difficult, let's say, in that sense that we have APIs and tools ready to connect to your ERP system. It is actually our aim to do that, because otherwise, let's say, the time needed to collect that data is a little bit more cumbersome. On the other hand, if that is not possible, no worries. We have also low entry templates, so that you know, okay, what data points should I collect? We collect that all in a certain format, whether it's your format or our format, but we validate that together. Now, the validation phase can be very fast based on that data, of course. The master data is something that you have to maintain and clean up. But on the other hand, it's also a good mirror for your organization to see, okay, what is or what do we feel is going on in our organization? Is that actually what is depicted and visualized in a map or in some bar charts? So that is a very crucial phase. And then afterwards, it's the most important phase is the scenario workshop phase, because then we see that brainstorming on what the strategy could look like, and really think out of the box is something that we use to our advantage, because it is possible to then also collect that let's say sensitivity within your company, within your sector, or even with your customer base, so that it is very, very tangible to see that the scenarios, even if it's out of the box, giving an impact, whether it's a higher cost or a lower cost, so that you really see, okay, this is something that we can really implement. So use it, and then also get it into the model, so that we see, what's happening. So in terms of get the data, we're talking about a couple of weeks with that project. Then after a month, you can have a real tangible and an interactive dashboard as a deliverable, as an outcome. And so how much time is needed from your side as a customer depends on the master data, but on the other hand, we can help you with that to speed up that process and have that also in place. So we are talking about a couple of days at that most in that sense.
Yeah, Kevin, I also have one more which I would like to answer maybe.
Go ahead.
It's from Rick. He asked what type of transport is used. Is it own transport or forwarders? Going back to the business case, because actually, to be honest, in this particular case, we were acting as a consultant because the company we talked about, our furniture client, they had their own vehicles. So actually, they were using their own fleet in delivering or doing these at-home deliveries. And what we did in this project was acting as a logistics consultant to help them in redesigning this strategy. They were not using any outsourced transport because for them it was very important to still have control over this this process of replenishing and delivering their end customers, because every drop is actually a customer facing meeting. So for them it was really important to have that owned themselves. And I think with that, Kevin, we're running out of time. We are at our 45 minutes.
Exactly. So I think from our side, again, we would like to thank you all to take the time to listen to our business case, to our demo. Explain a little bit in our own way how we do such a project, and also what the capabilities and how it could look like also for your organization. So again, thank you very much for your time, and from my side, I hope to see or let's say see or hear is a little difficult, but to give another webinar with another topic in mind, so that we can show what is possible in the wonderful world of supply chain data analytics.
Yes, and also thank you from my side, and have a good afternoon. Bye.
Thank you.